real?
Real enough.
There really aren't too many things more important than stories. They define us as people, they carry our collective wisdom onward for future generations, and they've been around for a really long time. So, it's no surprise that video games would eventually want to tell some stories too. When did it all start? When did video games decide that they wanted to be more than high-score machines? Big boxes and dimly lit rooms full of quarters and covered in sweat. That took a while, actually. A lot of people look towards early text-based adventure games as the genesis of story. I mean, they had a lot of text. What more do you need, right? Games like Colossal Cave Adventure and Zork. Heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, they'd give you a description of where you were and what was going on. You told them what you were doing. Pretty simple. But as much of a story as you could possibly glean from these games, they usually just consisted of dungeon dives. And they were also missing one very key aspect of the video game genre. Video. Pong was released in 1972, arguably the first video game ever, and it wasn't until 1981 Donkey Kong joined the arcade circuit as well. Pretty simple game, Donkey Kong at the top, captured princess and you at the bottom. Falling barrels, bouncing springs, and a multitude of screens to ascend before reaching the top. Jumpman, as the character was initially named, eventually to become Mario. His love had been kidnapped, and now she must be rescued. A narrative as old as time, and pretty ubiquitous amongst media. There's never really been a shortage of princesses to save in pop culture, but the reason we know this is the story of Donkey Kong is because it's the first game ever to show us. Through the use of cutscene, we're shown the beginning, a woman under Donkey Kong's arm being carried to the top of the level, and we're also shown the end. Lovers brought together once more. How sweet. A narrative begun and a narrative concluded. And this was something completely unique at the time. This was the birth of story in video games. Predating this, you had Space Invaders, Asteroids, Pac-Man, games based around high scores. Go until you run out of lives or quarters and see how far you can take your funny little acronym up the rankings. But Donkey Kong was different. Finally, there was a reason to be doing what you were doing. I mean, the high scores were still there, obviously, but your love needed to be saved. Good a reason as any. And the bar was set. Games like Dragon's Lair, Star Wars, and Tron brought to the arcade, eventually home consoles with some of the earliest and most memorable stories ever told. Metroid, Zelda, Ninja Gaiden stories were now an integral part of the gaming landscape, and we've never really looked back. To have a game without a narrative at this point is a deliberately conscious choice. And over the decades, we've seen some of the most innovative and mind-blowing stories ever told in the medium. Insofar as game design mechanics go, it's pretty unique. Story is completely unaffected by any of the hurdles of mechanistic processing that might hamper other ambitions. Whatever the mind of the writer can think up, that dictates the limits. Whether it's as simple as clearing a demonic infestation from a base on Mars, or freeing the infinite incarnations of a girl spread across multiple universes by allowing yourself to die as both the protagonist who saved her and the antagonist who imprisoned her simultaneously. Things can get pretty wild, and that's the beauty of it all. Story predates video games by a millennia, but since its gaming introductions on the back of Donkey Kong has offered near infinite entertainment for our little gamer brains, limited only by the creativity of the human mind, and only as important as the greatest lessons and morals that our entire species care to imbue it with. So, no big deal really. And as far as the horizons are looking at the moment, it's really no end in sight. The birth of story in video games. That's the video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you on the next one. And as always, love ya. Bye-bye.